There's no place for you in my world. The silent scream of millionaire Ilara echoed in the forest's darkness as the icy rain lashed the faces of the newborn twins. Their tiny hearts pounded in despair, their cries muffled by the storm, abandoned in a fragile basket by the side of a remote winding road. Ilara turned, the roar of her luxury car's engine tearing through the night silence, leaving behind a cruel fate. But the instant her taillights vanished into the fog, a pair of amber eyes gleamed in the darkness, and the shadow of a legendary albino tiger moved, approaching the basket. And what it would do would forever change the fate of those babies. The majestic albino tiger, with its snow-white fur and amber eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of ages, stopped a few paces from the basket. The incessant rain streamed down its coat, but it seemed unfazed. Its movements were slow and deliberate, each step a silent symphony in the drenched forest. The twins' tiny cries, previously muffled by the storm, now seemed to intensify, a fragile lament piercing the heart of the night. The feline tilted its head, its whiskers twitching slightly, as if listening to the most delicate and urgent melody. There was no hunger in its gaze, nor the ferocity one would expect from a predator. Instead, a deep curiosity and, surprisingly, an almost protective calm emanated from it. It approached even closer, its large, damp snout hovering over the basket's edge. The babies, huddled against each other, felt the warmth of the animal's breath, a strange contrast to the biting cold that enveloped them. Their tiny fists flailed in the air, and tears streamed down their rosy faces. With a delicacy that belied its size and wild reputation, the tiger nudged its nose against the blanket covering the newborns. One of the twins, a girl, stopped crying for an instant, her tiny eyes opening to gaze at the golden immensity before her. It was an impossible encounter, a scene that defied all logic of nature and human cruelty. The tiger then did something even more unexpected. It lay down beside the basket, its imposing body forming a barrier against the icy wind and rain. Its warmth radiated, heating the air around the babies, offering them an improvised and miraculous refuge. Hours dragged on, and the storm began to subside, leaving behind a trail of mist and a heavy silence. The tiger remained there, motionless, a silent and vigilant guardian. Its amber eyes scanned the darkness, alert to any threat, while the twins, now calmer and warmer, fell asleep under its unusual protection. Dawn painted the sky with shades of grey and pink, revealing the extraordinary scene. Two babies sleeping peacefully, nestled beside one of nature's most majestic and feared predators. It was then that an old truck, its yellowed headlights cutting through the morning mist, appeared on the road. It was Mr. Elias, a local farmer known for his kindness and his morning rounds to check his property's fences. His eyes, accustomed to the wild landscape, widened in disbelief as he spotted the scene. At first, he thought it was a mirage, a trick of the light. But as he drew closer, reality asserted itself, as shocking as it was beautiful. An albino tiger, a creature of legends, guarding two babies in a basket. Mr. Elias stopped the truck abruptly, his heart pounding in his chest. He got out, his steps hesitant, fearing he might scare the animal or worse, be attacked. But the tiger merely raised its head, its eyes fixed on the man, without any sign of aggression. There was a stillness, a mutual understanding that transcended species barriers. The farmer, with his simple soul and love for life, felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. It was a miracle, a sign that even in the deepest darkness, compassion and protection could emerge from the most improbable sources. He approached the basket, and the tiger moved back slightly, allowing access, but without fully retreating. Mr. Elias saw the twins' sleeping faces, rosy and seemingly unharmed, despite the night of terror. His eyes filled with tears. He knew he had to act, that these tiny beings needed a home, love, a family. And he knew that the story of that night, of that improbable guardian, would echo throughout the region, touching hearts and challenging the very nature of human cruelty. The lives of those babies and Ilara's would never be the same. Mr. Elias, his heart still racing, knelt beside the basket. The twins, a boy and a girl, slept soundly, their faces serene and rosy. He touched them with a trembling hand, feeling the softness of their skin and the fragility of their tiny lives. The tiger, observing every movement, let out a deep sigh, a sound that seemed more of relief than threat. The farmer understood. That animal was not a predator, but a protector. With reverent care, Mr. Elias picked up the basket, feeling the precious weight of the babies. The tiger followed him with watchful eyes until he was inside the truck. Before leaving, the farmer looked back, and the majestic albino tiger vanished into the forest mist, as if it had never been there, leaving behind only the legend and a miracle. The news spread like wildfire in the small community of Vale Sereno. Mr. Elias, upon arriving at his farm, rushed to his neighbor, Ms. Clara's house, who always helped in emergencies. Her eyes widened upon seeing the babies and hearing the unbelievable story of the tiger. Within hours, the farmer's house was filled with curious and emotional neighbors. Everyone wanted to see the miracle babies. The admiration was palpable, disbelief mingled with faith. How could two newborns survive such a cold and rainy night, guarded by a wild tiger? It was an event that defied reason and touched everyone's soul. Among the residents who rushed over was a young couple, Ana and Pedro, who had dreamed of having children for years. Their eyes shone with a mix of hope and tenderness as they held the little ones. The girl with a tuft of dark hair and the boy with rosy cheeks seemed made for them. Ms. Clara, with her wisdom, noticed the immediate connection. "They need a home, love," she said, looking at Ana and Pedro with approval. The couple, without hesitation, offered to care for the twins, promising to give them all the affection and protection they deserved. The entire community supported the decision, seeing in them the perfect family for the miracle babies. Meanwhile, miles away, in the cold opulence of her mansion, Ilara received the news in a distorted way. Her butler, Mr. Davies, mentioned a rumor circulating in town about babies found on the mountain road. "It seems they were abandoned, madam, but the strangest thing is that they were found unharmed, protected by a wild animal. An albino tiger, they say." Ilara felt an icy shiver run down her spine. An albino tiger? The description was disturbingly familiar. Her fingers tightened around the crystal goblet she held, almost shattering it. She tried to ignore it, to attribute everything to popular imagination, but the image of the feline, majestic and protective, began to haunt her. The news that the babies were well, that they had found a loving home, should have been a relief. But for Ilara, it was a growing torment. The purity of the life she tried to extinguish, the compassion of a wild animal she could never understand, all of it confronted her. The veil of bitterness covering her heart seemed to tear, revealing a painful glimpse of remorse. The solitude of her wealth, once a refuge, now seemed like a prison. The image of the tiger's amber eyes and the baby's innocent faces was etched into her mind, a constant reminder of her cruelty and the miracle she couldn't prevent. Justice, she realized with growing dread, would not come from courts, but from her own conscience, which was beginning to awaken from a deep, icy slumber. Ilara felt a cold that didn't come from her mansion's air conditioning, but from within herself. The image of the tiger's amber eyes and the baby's innocent faces was etched into her mind, a constant reminder of her cruelty and the miracle she couldn't prevent. Justice, she realized with growing dread, would not come from courts, but from her own conscience, which was beginning to awaken from a deep, icy slumber. Nights became a torment. Sleep, once a refuge, was now invaded by vivid nightmares. The rain, the baby's cries, the imposing shadow of the tiger. She woke up sweating, her heart pounding, feeling the weight of every decision. Her days, once filled with meetings and the management of her vast fortune, seemed empty. The gleam of gold and jewels no longer comforted her. On the contrary, it seemed to mock her impoverished soul. She tried to convince herself that she had done the right thing, that those babies were a burden, a threat to her legacy. But the voice of reason was muffled by the echo of the cries she tried to silence, and by the image of the tiger, a symbol of a compassion that she, in her wealth, had lost. In Vale Sereno, Ana and Pedro's home overflowed with contagious joy. The twins, now affectionately named Aurora and Lucas, flourished under the loving care of their new parents. Aurora, the girl, had a smile that lit up the room, and Lucas, the boy, showed an insatiable curiosity for everything around him. Ana, her eyes brimming with happiness, cradled Aurora, singing lullabies she never imagined she would sing. Pedro, with visible pride, built a small wooden crib, his calloused hands now dedicated to a labor of love. The community of Vale Sereno continued to support the new family, bringing gifts, advice, and above all, affection. Ms. Clara visited them almost daily, helping with the baby's feeding and bathing, her eyes shining with the satisfaction of seeing life triumph. The story of the albino tiger was told and retold, becoming a part of the twins' identity, a reminder of their miraculous origin and nature's unexpected kindness. Ana and Pedro, though aware of the story, focused on the present, building a secure future full of love for their children. They spoke of first birthdays, first steps, first mama and papa, simple but precious dreams that filled their hearts. Ilara, in turn, felt increasingly isolated. The walls of her mansion, once a shield against the world, now seemed to close in on her, suffocating her. She found herself looking out the window, observing the immaculate garden, but her thoughts were far away, on the mountain road, in the basket, on the babies. The idea that they were well, that they had found love, was both a poison and a balm. Poison, because it reminded her of her failure, her monstrosity. Balm, because deep within her hardened being there was a small spark of humanity that rejoiced for them, even if she wouldn't admit it. She began to read the local newspapers, discreetly searching for any mention of the miracle babies. Every article, every small note about the new family's happiness was a stab to her soul. The descriptions of Ana and Pedro's affection, of the community's solidarity, contrasted brutally with the image of her own life, devoid of real affection and purpose. Her gestures became slower, her gaze more distant. Mr. Davies, her butler, noticed the change, the melancholy settling upon his mistress, but he dared not comment. Ilara was becoming a shadow of herself, imprisoned not by bars, but by the invisible shackles of her own conscience, which forced her to confront the purity of the life she tried to extinguish and the compassion of a wild animal that had surpassed her in humanity. With each passing day, bitterness gave way to deep remorse, a heavy feeling that promised to accompany her until the end of her days, a silent and relentless justice. Ilara desperately tried to stifle the voice of her conscience, but it echoed in every corner of the mansion, in every reflection of her face in the mirror. She intensified her activities, seeking refuge in managing her businesses and attending social dinners, but the opulence surrounding her seemed empty. The forced smiles of her guests, the trivial conversations about fortune and power, all sounded hollow and meaningless. Her eyes, once so focused and determined, now drifted, searching for something that wasn't there, or perhaps trying to avoid what was. Mr. Davies, discreet as ever, noticed his mistress's increasing pallor, how she barely touched her food, the insomnia revealed in deep circles under her once vivid eyes. He saw her sitting for hours in the library, not reading, but just staring into space, her hand clenched over an untouched book, as if holding an invisible pain. The image of the majestic and protective albino tiger haunted her incessantly, a living reminder of a compassion that she, in her selfish blindness, had denied. She felt observed, not by human eyes, but by nature itself, which seemed to have witnessed her act and condemned her to a silent torment. Far away in Vale Sereno, Aurora and Lucas's lives unfolded into a tapestry of love and discovery, woven with threads of hope and gratitude. Ana and Pedro's home was a sanctuary of joy, filled with the sweet babbling of the babies and the warmth of a true home. Aurora, the girl, already sat up on her own, her curious eyes following Anna's movements around the kitchen, and her tiny arms reached out in an irresistible invitation for a hug. Her first soft mama had melted Anna's heart, who now felt a fullness she had never imagined. Lucas, the boy, had discovered the joy of crawling, exploring every corner of the room with adorable determination, his contagious laughter filling the air. Pedro, with a wide smile and eyes brimming with pride, built a small wooden playpen for the little one's safety, and spent hours on the floor, playing with them, teaching them the sounds of farm animals and the colors of toys. The community continued to surround the family with genuine affection and inspiring solidarity. Ms. Clara, with her wisdom and nimble hands, helped Anna prepare the first baby foods, observing with satisfaction the twins' voracious appetite. Visits were constant, bringing handmade gifts, advice, and funny stories, creating a support network that strengthened the new family's bonds. A testament to human kindness. With each new edition of the local newspaper, Ilara felt a sharper pang in her heart. She locked herself in her office, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the pages, eagerly searching for the community news section. There they were, photos of Aurora and Lucas, now 6 months old, smiling at the camera, surrounded by Ana and Pedro, their eyes overflowing with love and happiness. A detailed article described their half-year celebration, the contagious joy of the small village, the gratitude of the adoptive parents. Ilara read every word, every detail of the happiness she had tried to destroy with her cruelty. The purity of those lives, the altruism of that community, the human connection she had scorned in her pursuit of wealth, all hit her with the force of an emotional tsunami. Her lips tightened, her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. She wouldn't allow herself that weakness. Remorse was a cold flame that consumed her from within, a silent and relentless punishment that would accompany her forever, trapped in the solitude of her wealth and the prison of her own conscience, with no escape. Ilara found no peace. The luxury of her mansion, once a symbol of her power and control, now seemed like a cold mausoleum, where her soul struggled in silent agony. Nights stretched into sleepless torture, her mind a whirlwind of endlessly repeating images, the relentless rain of that fateful night, the small abandoned basket, the amber eyes of the albino tiger that haunted her, and, above all, the serene and happy faces of Aurora and Lucas in the local newspaper photos. Every tick-tock of the antique clock in the living room was a cruel reminder of time passing, time she had wasted in bitterness and the incessant pursuit of a fortune that now seemed empty. Her appetite had completely vanished, and the elaborate meals meticulously prepared by her private chef were left untouched, a waste that would once have irritated her, but now she barely noticed. Mr. Davies, with his usual discretion, noticed his mistress's deterioration. Her shoulders, once erect and full of unwavering confidence, were now visibly stooped, and her eyes, once filled with a calculating and determined gleam, carried a deep and constant sadness, a melancholy that seemed to age her daily. She isolated herself even further, refusing social invitations and cancelling important business meetings, preferring the silent company of her tormented thoughts and the solitude of her own conscience. The vast wealth she so valued, and for which she had sacrificed her humanity, now seemed a heavy burden, a gilded cage that prevented her from finding any kind of redemption or peace. She wondered if happiness was a privilege she could never have again, or if the silent justice of her conscience was the inevitable and relentless price of her actions. Far away in Vale Sereno, time flew by, cradled by the sweet laughter and contagious innocence of Aurora and Lucas. The twins were about to complete their first year of life, and Ana and Pedro's home was a true sanctuary of joy and love. Aurora, with her dark curls swaying with every movement, took her first hesitant steps, her little arms outstretched to Ana, who received her with a tight hug and a loving kiss on the forehead, feeling a fullness she never imagined possible. Lucas, more adventurous and fearless, already crawled with impressive speed, knocking over toys and exploring every corner of the house with adorable determination, his little eyes shining with curiosity and his contagious laughter filling the air. Pedro, his hands now more accustomed to holding tiny fingers than heavy tools, spent hours on the floor, building towers of colorful blocks that the twins loved to knock down with contagious enthusiasm. The community of Vale Sereno, united and supportive, planned a big party for the twins' first birthday, an event that would celebrate not only the lives of the miraculous little ones, but also the unity and kindness of all who welcomed them. Ms. Clara, tireless and with her generous heart, helped Ana sew small festive outfits for the occasion and plan the menu, her eyes welling up with emotion at seeing the family flourish so beautifully and unexpectedly. The story of the albino tiger was now a modern fairy tale, whispered with reverence by the residents, a constant reminder of the miracle that brought Aurora and Lucas into Ana and Pedro's loving arms. They, though they would never forget their children's extraordinary origin, lived the present with immense gratitude, building a solid future brick by brick with unconditional love and dedication. Ilara, in her self-imposed seclusion, continued to follow the twins' lives through the news. She had instructed Mr. Davies to buy all the local newspapers, and she stacked them on her mahogany desk, flipping through them with a disturbing mix of dread and fascination. A small note about the preparations for the twins' first birthday struck her like lightning, piercing her armor of indifference. A party, a public celebration of the life she had tried to extinguish with such cruelty. The image of Aurora and Lucas, now almost toddlers, playing and smiling in the photos, contrasted brutally with her own empty and purposeless existence. She felt a sharp pang of envy, a burning desire to have experienced such joy, such human connection, but she knew it was too late for her. The veil of bitterness that enveloped her began to dissolve, revealing not peace, but a searing pain, the deep and corrosive pain of regret. She saw the human connection, the genuine altruism, the strength of the family she had rejected, materialized in the lives of those she tried to destroy. The twins' resilience, Ana and Pedro's unwavering strength, the community's inspiring solidarity, all of it confronted her, showing her the true wealth she had never possessed. Her fingers clenched the newspaper tightly, crumpling the photo of Aurora and Lucas, but the gesture did not alleviate the overwhelming pressure in her chest. Conscience, once a distant whisper, was now a deafening scream, and Ilara knew there was no escape from the prison she had built for herself. With each day approaching the birthday, Ilara's anguish intensified, transforming into a silent obsession. She found herself looking at the calendar, the gold pen in her hand, hovering over the day marked in red, as if she could erase the celebration that tormented her so much. The idea of a party, of laughter and balloons for the children she had abandoned, was such a brutal contrast to her own solitary existence that it left her breathless. Her eyes, once so cold and calculating, now carried a feverish gleam, a mix of dread and a morbid curiosity she couldn't suppress. The night before the big day, Ilara couldn't sleep. She got out of bed, her body heavy, and walked to her bedroom window, observing the darkness that enveloped her vast estate. The majestic full moon bathed the garden in a silvery light, but there was no beauty for her, only an oppressive emptiness. A voice, coming from the depths of her hardened soul, whispered an idea that shocked her. An insane idea, unthinkable for someone like her, who so valued her seclusion and pride. But the whisper became a clamor, an urgent need to see, to witness with her own eyes, the happiness she had tried to steal, with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time, but which was now tinged with despair. Ilara put on a dark coat and descended the stairs silently. Mr. Davies was asleep, and she didn't want to be seen. She took the keys to her most discreet car, a black sedan she rarely used, and left into the cold night. The engine started with a soft purr, and she drove away from the mansion, towards the mountain road that led to Vale Sereno. Every kilometer traveled was a battle against her own pride and the fear of what she would find. The journey seemed endless, but the familiar landscape of the road, with its curves and the morning mist beginning to form, brought vivid memories of that rainy night. The basket, the baby's cries, the tiger. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. As she approached Vale Sereno, the air began to vibrate with a different energy. Small, colorful flags adorned the houses, and balloons floated in some yards. Ilara parked the car at a more secluded spot where she could observe without being noticed. From afar, she saw Ana and Pedro's house, which was now a hub of activity. People arrived, carrying gifts and treats, their faces lit up by genuine smiles. Children ran across the lawn, their laughter echoing in the air. Ms. Clara, in her floral apron, supervised the setting up of a bountiful table in the garden. Ilara watched, her heart tight in her chest, a strange and overwhelming feeling taking hold of her. It wasn't just remorse, but something more complex, a pang of envy for the simplicity and warmth of that life, and a glimpse of the beauty of human connection she had rejected. She saw Ana and Pedro come out, each holding one of the twins, Aurora and Lucas, now taking their first hesitant steps, smiling at the world. The morning sun bathed their little faces, and Ilara felt a solitary tear roll down her hardened cheek. That was the turning point, the direct confrontation with the life she tried to extinguish, and the clear realization that true wealth was there, in those smiles and those open arms. Ilara felt the warmth of the solitary tear roll down her face, a damp trail that contrasted with the coldness of her hardened heart. It wasn't sadness, but an overwhelming understanding. There, in the simplicity of that garden, under the morning sun that kissed Aurora and Lucas's innocent faces, was the true wealth that she, in her insane pursuit of control and fortune, had blindly ignored. The children's laughter, the adults' joyful chatter, Ana and Pedro's hugs to the little ones. Everything was a cruel and beautiful mirror of what her life was not. She watched Lucas, with his dark curls, trying to catch a butterfly near a red balloon, and Aurora, with a gap-toothed smile, clapping her hands as Ana sang a birthday song. Every gesture, every sound, pierced her armor of bitterness, revealing the deep wound of her regret. The urge to approach fought against the dread of being recognized. Her pride, once unshakable, now seemed fragile, crumbling before the purity of that love. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, and took a deep breath, the fresh mountain air heavy in her lungs. No, she couldn't expose herself. Not yet. That glimpse, however, had planted a seed, a seed of something new which she couldn't name, but which compelled her to reconsider everything. In Vale Sereno, Aurora and Lucas's birthday party was a spectacle of pure joy. Ana and Pedro's garden was filled with villagers, all with sincere smiles and open hearts. Ms. Clara, with her contagious energy, handed out cake and juice, her eyes shining with happiness at seeing the twins, now standing exploring the world with endless curiosity. Aurora, in a floral dress, tried to blow out the candle on her cake, while Lucas, in a plaid shirt, guffawed at seeing a puppy run across the lawn. Ana and Pedro exchanged glances, their eyes brimming with gratitude, holding their children's hands, feeling the fullness of a love that had transformed their lives. They had found not only children, but a purpose, a deep connection with the community that had embraced them. The story of the albino tiger was whispered among the guests, a reminder of the miracle that united that family and the kindness that overcame cruelty. Ilara remained there for a few more minutes, absorbing every detail of the scene, etching it into her memory. The pain of regret was intense, but mingled with it was a strange sense of peace, as if a long-dormant part of her soul was finally awakening. With one last look at the happy family, she started the car and left, leaving Vale Sereno behind. The mountain road, once a path to her crime, now seemed like a portal to a new phase of her life, still uncertain but undeniably different. Upon arriving at her mansion, the silence that awaited her was heavier than ever. The sumptuous walls, the expensive furniture, the works of art, none of it offered the comfort or joy she had witnessed in Vale Sereno. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing in her mind. The image of Aurora and Lucas's smiles, Ana and Pedro's loving eyes, and the community's solidarity now superseded the nightmares of the tiger and the rain. The prison of her conscience, once a torment of guilt, began to transform into a space for reflection, a silent invitation to change. Ilara knew the path would be long and painful, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope, a small flame that could melt the ice in her heart. Ilara knew the path would be long and painful, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, a flame that could melt the ice in her heart. At dawn, the mansion's silence seemed even more oppressive. The luxury that surrounded her, once a refuge, was now a constant reminder of her solitude. She walked to the library window, her eyes fixed on the garden, but her mind replayed every laugh, every hug witnessed in Vale Sereno. The image of Aurora and Lucas, with their sun-kissed faces, danced in her memory, a sweet and painful melody that contrasted brutally with the emptiness of her life. Mr. Davies, serving her breakfast, noticed the change. There was a new stillness in Ilara, an introspection beyond melancholy. She barely touched her toast, her fingers toying with the teacup, her gaze lost. "Are you well, Mrs. Ilara?" he asked, his voice soft. Ilara merely nodded, unable to articulate the storm of emotions. Hope was fragile, mixed with immense dread. What if she tried to change and failed? What if the community rejected her, or worse, discovered the truth? The fear of being exposed, of having her crime revealed, was still a powerful shackle. In the days that followed, Ilara found herself in limbo. She could no longer immerse herself in business with the same ferocity, nor did she find solace in social dinners. Conversations about profits seemed trivial and empty. She spent hours in the library, not reading but holding a book with trembling hands, her eyes fixed on a distant point. The albino tiger, once a figure of torment, now mingled with the images of the twins, a symbol of compassion she had scorned, but which now called to her insistently. She began to make small changes to her routine. She dismissed her private chef for some meals, preferring to prepare something simple, a gesture that connected her to the simplicity of Vale Sereno. She walked more in the garden, observing the flowers, feeling the sun, something she once considered a waste of time. Every small action was a challenge to her old self, an attempt to dismantle the fortress of ice she had built around her heart. Meanwhile, in Vale Sereno, life followed its joyful course. Aurora and Lucas, now a year and a day old, were the center of Anna and Pedro's universe. Aurora, with firmer steps, ran after Lucas, who crawled quickly, both laughing happily through the house. Pedro had built a swing in the garden, and Anna spent hours pushing the little ones, singing and observing the sparkle in their eyes. The community celebrated the family, with Ms. Clara bringing pies and neighbors offering help. Human connection, altruism, simple and genuine joy were the essence of that place. Ilara, in her seclusion, still requested the newspapers. The news from Vale Sereno, once a source of pain and remorse, now brought a pang of something different. Admiration for the resilience and kindness of that family. She saw photos of the twins, growing happy, and felt a lump in her throat. Justice, she realized, was not just punishment, but the full and loving life she had tried to deny, and which now flourished independently of her. The small flame in her heart, though fragile, warmed the icy walls, promising a slow but inexorable transformation. True overcoming would not be just for the twins, but for herself in her search for a path back to humanity. The small flame Ilara felt in her heart was, indeed, fragile, like the ember of an almost extinguished fire, yet persistent. She found herself in a new kind of prison, no longer that of blind bitterness, but of uncertainty, of fear of her own capacity to change. Mornings at the mansion were now a silent battlefield. The ritual of drinking coffee, once a mechanical act, had become a moment of painful reflection. She watched the steam from the cup, and in her mind, images of Aurora and Lucas playing in Vale Sereno's garden superseded the gleam of the silverware. Their happiness was a beacon, both inspiring and overwhelming. Mr. Davies, with his discreet perceptiveness, noticed that his mistress no longer reprimanded him for small faults, nor demanded the relentless perfection of before. There was a softness in her gestures, a more distant, less critical gaze. She, in turn, began to notice Mr. Davies not just as an employee, but as an elderly man with worry lines around his eyes, who had dedicated much of his life to serving her. This new perception was a shock, a crack in the wall of indifference she had built. One day, while flipping through a newspaper that featured another photo of the twins, Lucas, now a year and a half old, holding Aurora's hand, who was already walking confidently, both smiling at the camera with an innocence that cut Ilara's heart. She read a small article about the need for donations for the local orphanage, which was struggling. Automatically, her first impulse was to ignore it. But the image of the twins, the memory of the albino tiger that protected them, and the voice of her conscience, now louder, made her hesitate. She didn't want her name associated with any act of charity, fearing it would raise suspicions or worse, be seen as an attempt at redemption for her crime. However, the idea of children in need, helpless as the twins once were, touched her in a way she had never imagined. That afternoon, Ilara instructed Mr. Davies to make an anonymous and substantial donation to the orphanage. She did so with a neutral, almost cold voice, but her hands trembled slightly as he wrote down the instructions. It was a small step, a gesture that contrasted with her entire life of selfishness, and the feeling that overcame her was not one of immediate relief, but of a strange and uncomfortable satisfaction. It was as if a small stone had been removed from her chest, allowing the air to enter a little deeper. Meanwhile, in Vale Sereno, life followed its blessed rhythm. Aurora and Lucas were the joy of the village. Their first steps had turned into lively runs around the garden. Their voices, once babbling, now formed small words and phrases that delighted Anna and Pedro. Lucas, with his inexhaustible energy, loved pushing toy cars, while Aurora, more observant, spent hours reading picture books with Ana on her lap, pointing to animals and laughing. Ana and Pedro's home was an epicenter of life and love, with doors always open to neighbors who came to share laughter and stories. Ms. Clara, with the wisdom of years, observed the twins with special affection. "They are living proof that good always finds a way, no matter how dark the night," she commented to Ana while helping prepare lunch. Ana and Pedro, in turn, watched their children grow, each day a new miracle, and the gratitude in their hearts was immense. They had built a solid family, founded on love, resilience, and the unwavering human connection that the community of Vale Sereno so generously offered. The story of the albino tiger, the silent guardian, was told and retold, not as a horror tale, but as a legend of protection and hope. A constant reminder that compassion could emerge from the most unexpected places, defying cruelty and indifference. Ilara, in her mansion, felt the echo of this compassion in her own heart, an echo that for the first time was not just of torment, but of a faint promise of redemption. Ilara felt the echo of compassion reverberate in her heart, a strange and uncomfortable sound that nevertheless did not leave her. The anonymous donation to the orphanage had been an impersonal gesture, a calculated attempt to silence her conscience without exposing herself, but the stillness that followed was not of peace, but of a growing restlessness, an emptiness that not even the luxury of her mansion could fill. The images of Aurora and Lucas, growing in love and joy in Vale Sereno, continued to haunt her, but now with a new layer of meaning. They were not just ghosts of her cruelty, but beacons of a life of connection and purpose that she had denied herself. The days at the mansion dragged on, each heavier than the last. Ilara, once a woman with a full agenda and quick decisions, now spent hours in silent contemplation, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Mr. Davies, always discreet, observed her with veiled concern, noticing the change in her demeanor. She, in turn, began to notice his glances, his small kindnesses, and for the first time she didn't see them as duty, but as expressions of genuine care that she had never reciprocated. This perception hit her hard, revealing the extent of her own indifference over the years and the solitude she herself had cultivated. One morning, while flipping through the newspaper Mr. Davies had left on her polished mahogany desk, her eyes stopped at a news item about Vale Sereno's annual fair. It would be a fundraising event for the construction of a new community center, a place where families could gather, and children, like Aurora and Lucas, would have a safe space to play and learn. The article included a photo of the twins, now almost 2 years old, helping Ana decorate a small candy stall. Lucas, with a mischievous smile, tried to grab a cookie, while Aurora, with her usual sweetness, offered a flower to Ms. Clara, her little eyes shining with pure joy. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. The idea of a community center, a place of unity and mutual support, was the epitome of everything she had scorned, and now, paradoxically, desired with increasing intensity. The fear of being discovered was still a knot in her stomach, a shackle that bound her, but the sight of those children, benefiting from a space she could help create, was a powerful, almost irresistible call. She closed her eyes, the image of the majestic albino tiger coming to mind, its wise eyes seeming to encourage her to go beyond anonymity, to face her own shadows. That afternoon, Ilara called Mr. Davies to her office, her voice firmer than she expected. "Mr. Davies," she began, gesturing slightly with her hand, "I would like you to conduct a discreet investigation into the community center project in Vale Sereno. Find out what is needed, the costs involved, and who is actively involved in the organization." Mr. Davies, without questioning, merely nodded, his eyes conveying a silent understanding and a loyalty that Ilara hadn't known she needed, but now valued. As he withdrew, Ilara felt a mix of apprehension and a strange lightness. It wasn't the same empty satisfaction as the previous donation. It was a commitment, albeit indirect, to the lives of those people, to the future of the twins she had tried to destroy. She knew she was walking on dangerous, uncertain ground, but the flame in her heart, once faint, now crackled with a little more strength, illuminating a path of hope. In Vale Sereno, preparations for the annual fair were in full swing. Ana and Pedro, with the tireless help of Ms. Clara and many neighbors, worked ceaselessly. Aurora and Lucas, with their contagious energy, were the unofficial mascots of the event, running among the colorful stalls, their laughter echoing joyfully through the square. The community was united, each contributing what they could, whether with manual labor, food donations, or simply with good humor and a spirit of camaraderie. The construction of the community center was an old dream, and the prospect of seeing it realized filled everyone with hope and pride. Ana, watching her children play freely, felt her heart overflow with immense gratitude. "They are our greatest inspiration, Pedro," she said, holding her husband's hand tenderly. "Everything we do is for them and for this blessed place that welcomed them with so much love." Pedro smiled, squeezing her hand. "They showed us the true meaning of family and community. The albino tiger brought us the greatest blessing, a miracle we will never forget." Ilara, in her mansion, received Mr. Davies' detailed report. The numbers, the names of the volunteers, the project details, everything was there, meticulously organized. She ran her fingers over the paper, imagining the children playing and learning in the future center, a place of laughter and human warmth. Fear was still present, a persistent shadow, but the promise of redemption, once a distant whisper, was now a clearer voice, guiding her along a path she never thought she would tread. True wealth, she realized with painful clarity, was not in accumulating material possessions, but in building bridges, in giving of oneself, in genuinely connecting with humanity. True wealth, she realized with painful clarity, was not in accumulating material possessions, but in building bridges, in giving of oneself, in genuinely connecting with humanity. However, between this new perception and action, there was an abyss of fear and pride. Ilara pressed her lips together, her eyes fixed on the report's numbers. An anonymous donation, yes, but of what magnitude? And how to ensure it reached the right destination without raising suspicions about the source? The image of Aurora and Lucas, smiling in the newspaper photo, mingled with that of the albino tiger, its penetrating eyes, as if observing her, demanding more than a calculated gesture. That night, Ilara's sleep was restless. She dreamed of the dark road, the rain, and the baby's cries. But this time, the tiger was not a figure of dread, but of protective majesty. And the twins, instead of helpless, extended small hands towards her, inviting her into the light. She woke with a racing heart, a decision maturing in her mind. Fear was still there, a knot in her stomach, but the flame in her chest now burned with an intensity she could no longer ignore. The next day, Ilara called Mr. Davies again. Her voice was firmer, but there was a subtle vulnerability in her eyes that he had never seen before. "Mr. Davies," she began, "I would like you to prepare a substantial donation for the community center project in Vale Sereno. Ensure it is completely anonymous. Use an intermediary if necessary, so there is no connection to this mansion or my name. Let it be enough for the project to be completed comfortably." Mr. Davies, without a word, merely nodded, silent understanding in his gaze. He knew something profound was happening with his mistress, and he felt a renewed respect for that woman who, in her solitude, was finding a new path. As Mr. Davies attended to the instructions, Ilara felt a strange mix of apprehension and an almost palpable lightness. It wasn't the euphoria of charity, but the feeling that she was, finally, aligning her actions with the voice of her conscience. It was a gigantic step, a calculated risk that propelled her out of her comfort zone into unknown territory. In Vale Sereno, the community's energy was at its peak. The annual fair was approaching, and the enthusiasm for the community center was contagious. Ana and Pedro, with Aurora and Lucas running and playing around, supervised the setting up of the stalls. "I can't wait to see the center finished," Ana said to Pedro as Lucas tried to reach a colorful balloon. "It will be such a special place for the children, a legacy for all of us." Pedro agreed, his eyes shining with pride. "That's the spirit of Vale Sereno, Ana. We always come together." A few days later, unexpected news spread like wildfire through the village. An anonymous and extraordinarily generous donation had been made for the community center project. It was an amount that would not only guarantee the construction, but also allow the space to be equipped with everything the children would need. The joy was immense. Ms. Clara cried with emotion, and the residents hugged each other, marveling at the kindness of a stranger. "It's a miracle!" they exclaimed. "Another miracle for Vale Sereno!" Ana and Pedro felt a wave of gratitude, their hearts overflowing. They knew that gesture, coming from an unknown place, was proof that kindness, like the albino tiger, would always find a way to protect and nurture life. At the mansion, Ilara read the small note in the local newspaper about the donation. There were no details, just the mention of the anonymous generosity. She felt a tremor run through her body. It wasn't fear, but a complex emotion that blended relief, a silent pride, and a pang of something deeper. The image of Aurora and Lucas's smiles, now guaranteed a future of play and learning in the new center, filled her mind. She had done something good, something that would directly impact their lives without them knowing. The prison of her conscience opened a little more, revealing not just light, but an irresistible invitation. The annual fair was days away, and Ilara felt an overwhelming need to see, with her own eyes, the impact of her gesture, to feel the joy she had helped create. The path to Vale Sereno, once a journey of darkness, now called to her with the force of destiny. Ilara, driven by a force she could no longer ignore, instructed Mr. Davies to prepare the car for a trip. It wouldn't be her usual luxurious sedan, but a more discreet, less conspicuous vehicle. Her fingers drummed nervously on the armchair as he left, her mind a whirlwind of apprehension and an almost childlike curiosity. She didn't know what she expected to find, but the need to witness the life she had touched, even indirectly, was overwhelming. She dressed soberly, a scarf covering part of her face, a wide-brimmed hat, seeking the anonymity she so feared losing. The journey was silent, Mr. Davies respecting her quietude. As they approached Vale Sereno, the air seemed to vibrate with a different energy, a hum of voices and laughter that reached the road. Parking the car a safe distance from the main square, Ilara got out, feeling her heart beat erratically in her chest. The annual fair was a spectacle of colors and sounds. Stalls adorned with colorful ribbons offered homemade sweets, local crafts, and simple games. Children ran everywhere, their pure and uninhibited laughter filling the air. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy mingled with the scent of fresh flowers. Ilara walked slowly through the crowd, her eyes scanning every face, every detail, absorbing the atmosphere of joy and unity. She saw Ms. Clara, with her welcoming smile, chatting animatedly with a group of women, and the image of the community center under construction, with its newly erected walls, brought a pang of silent pride. Then she saw them. Near a wooden toy stall, Ana and Pedro stood hand in hand, watching Aurora and Lucas. The twins, now almost 2 years old, were a picture of pure happiness. Lucas, with his golden curls, tried to push a small wooden cart, while Aurora, with bright eyes, pointed to a colorful windmill, laughing with a sweetness that made Ilara's chest tighten. They were radiant, surrounded by the love of their parents and the warm community that had welcomed them. Ilara felt a lump in her throat, not from bitter remorse, but from a complex emotion that blended deep relief and unexpected gratitude. The life she had tried to extinguish flourished abundantly, more beautiful and vibrant than she could ever have imagined. Observing the scene, Ilara felt the icy walls in her heart, which once seemed insurmountable, finally give way. There was no great flash of light, but a gentle and inexorable dissolution. The image of the albino tiger, once a symbol of her monstrosity, now transformed into a silent guardian of her own redemption. It had protected the twins, yes, but it had also guided her, through guilt and fear, to this moment of clarity. Justice was not just the punishment she feared, but the opportunity to atone, to reconnect with the humanity she had abandoned. She didn't need their forgiveness, but she needed to forgive herself, and that moment, witnessing the joy she helped build, was the beginning of that forgiveness. Ilara remained there for a while longer, a silent figure in the crowd, absorbing every laugh, every hug, every display of affection. She felt a peace she hadn't known in decades, a lightness that replaced the weight of bitterness. As she turned to go back to the car, a faint, genuine smile, something rare on her face, appeared on her lips. She knew her life in the mansion would continue, perhaps still solitary in some aspects, but it would no longer be a prison. It would be a space for new choices, for building bridges, for practicing the compassion she had finally embraced. The path to true overcoming was not a destination, but a continuous journey, and Ilara, for the first time, was ready to walk it with an open heart. She had found her own version of Vale Sereno. Ilara's life after that day at the fair was, indeed, a transformed version of her own Vale Sereno, an inner sanctuary built on foundations of remorse and now of growing compassion. The mansion, once a mausoleum of her bitterness, began to breathe with a new, albeit discreet energy. She did not become an extroverted woman, nor did she seek the company of others, but the quietude that enveloped her was no longer one of solitude, but of contemplation. Ilara's mornings gained a new purpose. Instead of getting lost in dark thoughts, she spent hours in her office, no longer reviewing investments or expansion plans, but reading reports on community initiatives, charity projects, and the needs of orphanages and elderly care homes in distant regions. Mr. Davies, with his unwavering loyalty, became her silent confidant and her right hand in these new endeavors. He organized the anonymous donations, always with the utmost discretion, so that Ilara's generosity could reach those most in need, without her name ever being associated. She observed Mr. Davies, noticing the genuine satisfaction in his eyes when he spoke about the positive impact of her actions. This connection, once purely professional, transformed into a bond of mutual respect and a form of human warmth that Ilara never imagined she could experience. In Vale Sereno, life flourished with renewed vitality. The community center, a project Ilara had helped bring to fruition, was inaugurated with a big celebration, a testament to the village's unity and hope. The once empty walls now echoed with children's laughter, the sound of craft classes, and the melody of neighborly gatherings. Aurora and Lucas, now almost 3 years old, were the most enthusiastic frequenters of the new space. Their golden curls and bright eyes were seen in every corner, whether in the small children's library, in drawing classes, or playing in the newly installed playground. They grew strong, happy, and loved, the embodiment of the resilience and kindness that surrounded them. Ana and Pedro, watching their children, felt a gratitude that transcended words. The story of the albino tiger, told and retold, had become a living legend, a constant reminder that life, even in the most adverse circumstances, could be saved and nurtured by unexpected compassion. They knew that the anonymous donation to the community center was another link in this chain of miracles, proof that good could emerge from unimaginable places. Ms. Clara, with her wise gaze, often said, "The human heart is a mystery, Anna. Sometimes it needs a great shock to open, but when it opens, the light that enters can illuminate the world." Ilara, in her mansion, never confessed her crime. The secret remained with her, a silent burden, but one that no longer crushed her. The image of the albino tiger, which once tormented her as a relentless judge, was now a serene presence, a symbol of protection that extended beyond the twins, reaching her as well. It had been the catalyst for her transformation, the guardian of her own soul. She understood that true justice was not public punishment, but internal reconstruction, the daily choice to sow good where there had once been despair. Her heart, once frozen, had been thawed by small acts of altruism, by an indirect yet profound connection with the life she had tried to extinguish. Wealth, which was once her prison and her armor, had become a means to positively impact the world, a silent legacy of redemption. Ilara lived the rest of her days in the solitude of her mansion, yes, but not in the prison of her conscience. She had found freedom in compassion, peace in contribution, and true human connection in the silent art of giving. Her story was a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, hope can flourish, and the most hardened heart can finally find its way back to the light. The light Ilara had found was not a dazzling brilliance, but a soft dawn that colored her days in the mansion. Solitude, once a heavy burden, transformed into a chosen quietude, a sacred space for reflection and silent action. Her mornings were no longer dominated by bitterness or acquisition planning, but by the careful reading of letters and emails that Mr. Davies selected, detailing the needs of underprivileged communities, educational projects, and animal shelters. Her fingers, once agile in signing checks for millionaire investments, now traced lines on documents that ensured warm meals for the elderly, books for rural libraries, and veterinary care for abandoned creatures. Mr. Davies, always by her side, observed his mistress with discreet admiration. The formality between them remained, but it was tempered by a new layer of respect and a mutual understanding that transcended words. He became the catalyst for her generosity, the link between Ilara's wealth and the lives she touched. When he reported the success of an anonymously funded project, Ilara's eyes softened, and an almost imperceptible smile appeared on her lips, a gesture he never thought he would see. It was silent proof that compassion had, indeed, taken deep root. In Vale Sereno, life followed its blessed course. Aurora and Lucas, now grown children, with their contagious laughter and inexhaustible energy, were the soul of the community center. Lucas, with his keen curiosity, spent hours in the library, flipping through adventure books, while Aurora, with her innate sweetness, helped Ms. Clara tend the community garden, her small hands planting seeds with the same care with which her heart welcomed everyone. They were the personification of hope, a living testament to the miracle that had brought them to that loving home. Ana and Pedro, watching their children flourish, never forgot the story of the albino tiger. It was told on winter nights, by the fireplace, and on summer days under the shade of trees, always with the same reverence. The tiger was not just a guardian, but a symbol of the unexpected kindness life could offer, a reminder that even in darkness, the light of compassion would always find a way. The anonymous donation to the community center was seen as another gift from this benevolent universe, an extension of the same invisible hand that had protected the twins. At the mansion, Ilara, in her moments of quietude, still saw the image of the majestic feline. But now, The tiger's eyes did not judge her. They observed her with an ancestral wisdom, a silent invitation to continue her journey of redemption. She understood that the true prison was not the solitude of her wealth, but the bitterness of her heart, and true freedom she found in every act of kindness, in every bridge she built, even if invisible, between her life and that of others. Ilara never confessed her crime, but her life became a silent confession of regret and an ode to transformation. She lived her days not as a prisoner of her past, but as an architect of a brighter future, a legacy of love and altruism that flourished in secret, like the rarest and most beautiful flowers.